Welcome to Storybreakers, the show where we come up with a brand new film idea off the top of our heads. And if you like it, it's yours. My name is Chris Brennan, and with me today to break story is professional wrestler and the champion of RCW and also the Irish Tag Team Champion as well.
Correct.
Owen Richards. Owen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. How are you? It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I have to say, we've been friends for probably about 10 years or so, and I've always kind of followed Storybreakers throughout the year, whether it was the original podcast or specifically those live readings, which I went to pretty much every single one. Really enjoyed them. So it actually is quite special to finally be on Storybreakers myself. I feel honored.
Yeah, when I relaunched this concept, it wasn't just about bringing screenwriters on. I also thought, like, we've had Mirren Darcy, who is an actor who actually performed in the live readings, but it's also just about storytelling in general. Now,
Yeah.
I use a keyboard, you use a steel chair, but it is storytelling. So yeah, I thought this would just be a fun concept to actually bring a
Yeah.
professional wrestler on. And I have no idea what we're doing, but I reached out to you and just pitched, should we do a story, a film or a series that is about wrestling? It could be, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it could be a story about someone who happens to be a wrestler or somebody, a film about wrestling. I was like, either way, I think that there's so much to mine from this like wild and wacky, zany profession. So I wanted to get you on the show and see how we do.
Yeah, and I think like one of the most interesting things from like wrestling fan perspectives is always like behind the curtain, the behind the scenes stuff. It's like they love the documentaries, they love the books, they love hearing about all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So if I was writing like a movie or a TV show from scratch about wrestling, it would definitely be about a particular person and the backstage side of stuff and watching them maybe rise through the ranks and stuff like that. I think that's the direction I'd like to go in with it, because that's the type of stuff that's interesting to wrestling fans specifically.
Interesting. So you're saying for like a wrestling, for the topic itself should actually be completely centered around the profession of wrestling and kind of an up and comer coming into the.
I think so. I think
seeing it as like an entry point from the protagonist who's like, this is a goal of mine, and let's just enjoy their experience as the audience kind of
exactly like, and a lot of that will be
the efforts and.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of that will be based off like my own experiences and how I got into the wrestling industry and stuff like that. We can cover that in a little bit. And I want to kind of apply the experience that I have and seeing a lot of people come in and out of the wrestling business and the kind of trials and tribulations that come with that. And I think we can apply that to a really good story.
That's excellent. And yeah, you do have quite a unique story because you are currently a double champion. Is that right, or do you have more than those champions?
Just two at the moment. I had three fairly recently. Yes, yeah. So, so we're myself and my tag team
somebody
partner
defeated you.
Yeah, well, I had another tag team title, and we lost that a couple of weeks ago. So I did have three up until fairly recently. But myself and my partner Andy Steele, we wrestle as the Sabres of Destiny, and we are the current Irish tag team champions, and that's up in Fight Factory Pro Wrestling in Dublin, Ireland. And I'm also the RCW World Champion, which is the a Cork-based promotion. So I've had like really like, especially the last couple of years, I've had like a lot of really cool opportunities to wrestle a lot of like really big names in the wrestling business. Like only in July, I wrestled a guy called Big Damo, who used to wrestle as Killian Dane in WWE and NXT. I don't know if you know him. I wrestled Eric Young right before Christmas, who is obviously TNA star and WWE as well. So I kind of, after winning the RCW championship, I've had this opportunity to wrestle a lot of really cool people and have a lot of great matches. And all this stuff is recorded, so I got to keep it forever, you know?
That is fantastic. Yeah, I totally get it. I even remember when you like won your first championship, it must have felt very validating that you're like, just, this is like, you actually have it in your hands. Like, it's kind of like an award of some sorts, or a validation of,
and I think
that
it's like,
you've made it to a next level.
And I think it is quite like, it's an important thing, because what we do like isn't just the wrestling shows. The most important part of what we do is actually training on the mats, working with everybody every single week, because that's the thing you're doing consistently every week. The shows are just, I always see the shows as a bonus at the end of it, but what we do is what we do in training, if that makes sense. That's everything I
Yeah.
do. And then like the hard work pays off and we have these little shows. Because you think about it, you know, most of your matches are only going to be 10 minutes. So like that's 10 minutes in the week. But the important part is the 8 hours you've put in training that week on the lead up to that, if that makes sense. But still, when you do finally get that championship, you can't help but kind of be like, that's kind of like the promoters, I guess, recognizing your talent and your value, that they will be willing to put you as one of their champions and you can represent their band. So in that sense, yeah, it's an honor.
It's such an interesting point you make, because I've thought about that before. If you look at a WrestleMania, like I think now they go 2 nights a week or 2 nights of the calendar year, but for a while there it was a 1 night thing that went 6 hours or so. So the main event, like the big marquee match, would be at the end of a 6-hour show, and that would be about 15 to 18 minutes. And I would just think, I would like, as the writer, I would think about the person who's doing that. It's like, this person has waited around all day, all night. They're going out at nearly midnight to perform for 18 minutes. And if you think of it that way, it seems quite wild, but the pageantry, the promotion, like everything around it feels bigger than that. But when you break it down, it's somebody who's like, my big moment is 17 minutes long, and
And if
that
you
I
think
think
about
is
it,
just so fascinating.
and like that's a main event as well. Like if you think about somebody that's lower in the card, like maybe the show runs a little bit long, maybe a segment or two is too long, suddenly a match gets completely cut in some cases, or your match gets cut down from 10 minutes to 3 or 4 minutes. So
Right.
now suddenly your WrestleMania is like a 3-minute spot, including entrances. And that's just the way it is. And that happens on the independent scene as well. You travel down to Cork, you drive all day, you drive all the way back up, you hang around all day, and your whole spot, including entrances, is like 4 minutes. But like we do it because we love it.
That, see, like I do enjoy wrestling, but I don't really watch it much anymore. But I still enjoy the career of it, like the backstage aspects, the politics, the rivalries. Like there's something so dramatic about just the act of being a professional wrestler. So like you said just earlier, like that's probably where you'd like to take the story. And for me, I think that's a perfect concept, because
Yeah.
I haven't really seen that in a film as such, to actually just kind of break it down. Like even if you wanted to actually do a comparable, you could look at it as one of my favorite films of all time, Boogie Nights. And you watch Dirk Diggler, Mark Wahlberg enter the porn industry and become like a success. And then this kind of wild group of oddballs actually have a lot of like they become their own family, you know, like the group of misfits, you know. And I could actually see that concept of going, let's do a Boogie Nights but in wrestling, could actually work so well. And you could even bring these things where I say a lot of wrestling fans would know a lot of the backstage kind of politics, but if you kind of presented it in a way, they'd find it rewarding in that presentation. But you're actually, if anybody who wasn't a wrestling fan would see it, they'd probably really enjoy seeing the absurdity of how these relationships and the politics end up eventually leading to a 7 or 4 minute match in a ring. And why? Because people love it. They love it. It's a drug in and of itself.
I couldn't agree more. And like I think like the look behind the curtain side of it, I think that's exactly the way we go with this whole story. And I think it's very important as well, because everyone knows what the deal is with wrestling. Everyone knows it's air quotes fake and stuff like that. But I think if I was writing a movie and I was directing a movie about wrestling, even though that would be alluded to, I would never fully pull back the curtain, because you still want to be on that side where the mystery is there and you don't know how certain things happen. And so I think from a storyline point of view, you would be showing the person progressing, but you would never fully show the audience behind the curtain, if that makes sense. Because like why ruin it? Why show the magician's tricks? Like, do you know that kind of way?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes complete sense. So, like, how much actually do you think wrestling should be involved in the wrestling show? Like, there's another film that you could actually look at too. It's a little bit different as well, but I actually like to bring these kind of examples in because you kind
Mm,
of frame it in
mm,
structures and successes of other films. Is Whiplash, where you have this person who becomes a drummer and he's got this coach who's like very obsessive. And I think
mm,
there's actually a lot you can mine from a story
mm,
like that, and you
mm,
can put into this kind of storyline.
mm.
I think there's stuff you can look at, like when you actually,
Yeah.
like, again, it's kind of breaking down. If people kind of smirk at the idea of wrestling film, you go, well, look, there's so much commonality. I
Mm,
felt this way as well when I would talk to a cousin of mine about the orchestra. And I'm like,
mm,
wow, so you're like, you play an instrument in an orchestra. And he's like, yeah,
mm,
there's a lot of people there, there's probably a lot of politics. Who gets to decide who's like the lead of like one
yeah.
arrangement? And he went into descriptions that were
Mm,
very reminiscent of wrestling friends of
mm,
mine telling me about the politics. And I'm like,
mm.
it's the same, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
A bunch
It
of
happens.
creative people. It's just there's a decision maker who's making
Mm,
decisions that's subjective, and all
yeah.
of a sudden, then people start politicking. They start stepping
Mm.
on each other, and then that's where the drama unfolds. And for
And I
me,
think I have
that's
like,
actually where like a lot of the juiciness comes from.
I think I have a really, really good idea to go with once we get to that point, with using that as part of our narrative as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but yeah,
So
where
yeah,
do you want to
let's
start?
kick this let's kick this
Yeah.
off. Do you have an idea for a protagonist, like a
Yes.
character, male or female, that will
Mm.
go in that we will follow into this story?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what I want to do is kind of focus on like an original story, but use a lot of the experiences I had getting into the wrestling industry because that's near and dear to me. And my
Yeah.
whole story, which I'm not going to go into full detail because it's completely different to this, but is using a lot of that because there's interesting stuff in there and applying that to this story. So obviously, like wrestling fans or most people have seen The Wrestler. I know it's been out nearly 20 years now, where that covered the kind of the older wrestler who used to be the legend, who's kind of clinging on for dear life to have that one last moment and have that one match. I want to go in the opposite direction, and I want to get a guy that's starting from scratch, that is like maybe our protagonist is like a hardcore wrestling fan, kind of like I was, really wants to get into wrestling and going through his early steps of actually stepping into wrestling training, the trials and tribulations that come with that, eventually becoming a wrestler. And let's see how successful he gets then by the end.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think that makes perfect
Mhm.
sense. So, what kind of age range are we talking about for this main character?
Well, if if I call on my own original story, is like I've obviously been a huge wrestling fan my entire life since I was a kid. I remember when I was 10 watching Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12 and just thinking like, oh my God, like one day I'd love to be a wrestler. I always had it in the back of my mind. And when I was 18, I found a wrestling school in Ireland, went to an open class and had one of the worst experiences of my entire life. They had a guest trainer from America over who was this guy who had a really big ego and he was a bit of a bully, and he basically got me to do drills and warm-ups until puked. Now at the time I was a lot heavier. I wasn't the shape I was in now. I was quite a large man at the time. I lost a lot of weight since. And he when I started actually getting sick, I went to the bathroom, I was vomiting. He followed me in with all the wrestlers and he was like kind of shouting at me, going, oh, you want to be a wrestler? You want to be a wrestler? And the whole idea was that like this process was done by a lot of kind of, especially the kind of carny wrestling promoters, to weed out the weak, I guess. And it's like, well, we made him
Right.
get sick. We shamed him. Let's see if he comes back tomorrow. So I think I'd like to start with maybe something similar where our protagonist tries the wrestling, it doesn't work out. Maybe he goes to another town, he travels somewhere else, he finds another school, kind of like I did. It took 11 years for me to find another school, but maybe we'll go a little bit quicker with this guy. And that's where he actually meets, some good friends, gets some good training, and has better experiences. So I think it's a good starting point to kind of show not only how difficult it is getting into wrestling, but how territorial and difficult older school trainers can be. And I think that'd be a really good starting point where it's like you're starting with this dream. I'm going to be a wrestler, and you're just walking in and immediately just getting shut down and kicked out, and basically like getting that gut wrenching feeling like maybe I can't make it as a wrestler, kind of like I felt.
I actually really like that entire story, and I actually would suggest we actually use that exact framework and just go, somebody goes in, they
Okay.
try out, and then 10 years later, like something pulls them back in, or we'll figure out why they try again.
Mhm.
But I don't know. There's something
Yeah.
about if somebody goes in and they're 18 years old, and then by 20 years old
Mhm.
they try again. I kind of enjoy an experienced soul who is going in
Mhm.
here, and they have some experience in like different occupations, or they've tried different jobs and nothing really seems to fit.
Mm.
And we actually can follow that journey because now they're a little bit older. They're like
Mm.
athletically, they're probably not in their prime. I'm not suggesting you. I'm just highlighting like a fictional character now.
Maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think that there's something like charming about that
Mm.
story. And also, if you
I
wanted
think
to,
even
you could
from
actually frame it as in the story, we actually feel like this person might actually succeed in that first take, and then they're just
Mm.
completely steamrolled and just
Oh yeah.
derailed.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
even how we present it is
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, this
I,
person goes in and they're naturally great, and then it's just nope, it's a
yeah.
different type of story.
I'd love to romanticize because like I think everyone does that very first time you step into a wrestling ring. So you step up on the apron, you feel those ropes for the first time, you put your foot through, you step through, maybe you step through like Bret Hart, maybe you get through like Shawn Michaels, and then you get in and you kind of just like you're feeling inside and you have that moment and we all had it. And you've been in a wrestling ring, I'm sure you had the same thing. It's like you step in and it's like, you know, you feel like a wrestler instantly. So maybe he has that where like that first the start of the class is magic. Maybe he does one or two things that go really well, and he's thinking, "Oh, this is it. Like I'm gonna be the next, Dwayne Johnson, gonna be the next Stone Cold." But then he gets that reality check pretty instantly. But I do like the idea of maybe it does go well first.
Yeah, yeah, because you want to take people on a bit of a roller
Mm-hmm.
coaster for it. So you could actually start with, for
Mm-hmm.
some reason, I'm thinking this person is probably lying to their parents about where they're going that day. Like, it's like you kind of even
Okay.
begin in their
Yeah.
bedroom. Uh, you see the posters, like you see this person is obsessive, and they're a fan. Like this is a dream of theirs, and they're going. It's like, where are
Mm-hmm.
you going? And maybe the father's like, oh, I think they're going to see a lady, maybe, like actually begin with this kind of like the father's like,
Yeah.
yeah, look, he might hook
Yeah.
up, and the mother's like, stop it, don't be nasty. And then the result
Mm-hmm.
is he's going to secretly train as a professional wrestler, which again I think is quite
Mm-hmm.
charming. I love your idea, your take
Yeah.
on it. Actually, like the moment where he goes in and it's this kind of um high enhanced moment where he really feels like this is
Yeah.
destiny. He's touching the ropes. He's like, this is really
Yeah.
nice.
I'd love if he was like if I was because I'm a sucker for like flashbacks and stuff. He's like as he's getting into the ring, it's flashing into his brain like video of his favorite wrestlers getting in the ring. So he's thinking of like Bret Hart and whoever his wrestlers are, and it's flashing back. And in that moment, for a second, he even thinks he's one of those, like because he straight away is like, I'm doing the thing that I watched on TV for my entire life. I'm finally getting a chance to do it. And I think it's really romantic. I love it. Like if I was, I'd fight tooth and nail to keep that scene in the movie.
Then my instinct then is match cut that with him just getting wrecked. Like, and then
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like it's like
yeah.
the polar opposite is the experience. And um from what I understand, and what even you just highlighted too, it's like working people until they throw up, like just break them to prove. I really don't even
Hmm.
understand it. I guess it came from keeping the secret alive that you're actually gonna uh, like work somebody to the bone, and if they come back, then you'll start telling them the truth of it. I guess is where it comes from.
Yeah.
But again, you
Well, the
can tell
original, like
me.
the most famous
I'm
version of it
guessing.
is what what's his face? What's his face? Hulk Hogan. Like when he first went to wrestling training, like they broke his leg, like to
Wow.
teach him a lesson, and he said CB come back, and he healed from breaking his leg and came back, and then they started to respect him after they broke his motherfucking leg,
Wow.
So like it even happened to the likes of Hulk Hogan. So that's always been in the wrestling business, like so. I think that should be part of it, like. But I think, as you said, when he goes in and he's a little bit more mature, he has a bit more life experience. Like, because I feel like all skills are transferable. No matter what he did in those 10 years, he can apply that to wrestling. From my perspective, like, I was a better communicator. I was better at dealing with wrestling promoters. I was better at using social media. I put myself out there a little bit more confident. So I feel like even though they're going to try this again with this guy, he's going to be ready for it because he is coming in with that little bit more experience. And I think that's quite important. You
Oh,
want to show that he's grown up a little bit. But
that's this.
I think 30 might, I think 30 might be too old, because what I'm thinking is that I'd like to see the potential for him to maybe, like, actually make it. Like, I think getting in that late, kind of like I did, there was never a chance that you get to like WWE. So, but I like the idea of like this guy's still thinking. So maybe we go from 20 to like even just 27 or something like that. I know it's only a couple of years, but I think that
No,
makes a
no,
difference. Like,
it's great, and we could even take it as kind of the 8 Mile approach with Eminem, where you're actually following this
Mhm.
guy to like we're not seeing B Rabbit become the global superstar, but we kind of end it with going like he's on that journey, like he's going that direction. So
Mhm.
this story,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
with how we do this, we spitball everything, but it could end with him getting
Mhm.
the tryout for like the major brand,
Mhm.
or like even
Mm.
getting the acceptance to the major brand. But we don't need to actually follow like
Yeah.
that. That's a huge journey in a story to get to
Mm.
like the WrestleMania main event. I'm not sure we need to
Mm.
chart that much.
I agree, and I think it'd be more so getting, because I do have an idea that revolves around a one big opportunity where he finally gets that one shot to
Yeah.
prove himself, which could potentially lead then to your WWE contracts getting on everyone's radar. And I think the whole movie should build up to him getting, or finally getting, this opportunity. And we can go through how we get there, obviously.
Oh, that sounds great. And I actually really enjoy the idea that the meantime experience from like 18 to 26 or whatever is filled with kind of
Mm.
menial jobs that he's not really suited for, but he can mine that experience to
Mm.
actually
Mm.
succeed in that chosen profession.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I think, yeah, that
But
actually kind of
you got
makes
to
me
be quite
think.
careful, because this needs to be quite snappy as well, because you want to get back to the wrestling fairly quickly. So you want to keep it like that. Like, you can show that, but I wouldn't linger too much on that side of his life as well, if that makes sense.
That is true, except this person needs to continue working while they're a wrestler,
Hmm.
right? So it's not like they've quit
Oh yeah,
everything.
yeah, of course,
And
yeah.
so I
Hmm.
think you can have them as like this is not their lot in life, and they can still work. Like I actually think there'd be a lot of fun with this person having that job, the day job, and they show up and like they're secretly a
Hmm.
wrestler now, and they're trying not to
Hmm.
let people
Hmm.
know that
Yeah,
this kind of like
yeah,
Fight Club vibe, where it's like, why do you have a black eye? And it's like,
yeah,
and he goes, I got in a bar
yeah,
fight, and it's like you're
yeah,
pretending to have gotten
yeah,
into a real fight to hide the fact that you were fake fighting.
yeah.
You know?
That's really good. I really, really like that. There's actually a wrestler who's an independent wrestler who puts up a lot of videos, kind of taking the piss out of the wrestling industry in general. And if you're a wrestler, you find his content very funny, but it's all just comedy stuff.
Right.
One of the ones he put up was like your Monday morning Zoom meeting after a weekend of wrestling, and he sits down in the Zoom and he's on a video call, but he has his like championship belt. And he's like, "Good morning, everyone." It's like a normal kind of Zoom meeting. And he's like, yeah, I guess I had a busy weekend." And he's like, the whole idea is like, I'm a wrestler, but really, like, you're not. You have a normal job, like.
That is great. So was there like a character arc that you have in mind for this protagonist? So basically a learning experience that they're going to go through that kind of justifies the success at the end of this journey. And I can imagine, as we're kind of highlighting, that the end of the journey can be like the opportunity or the contract, like the opportunity for a
Yeah,
contract or the
I
contract.
don't want to give too much away. I have an idea of where I want to go with it, but I don't want to be given like the full end until we decide the early stage of it. So the
Okay.
idea I kind of had was that, like, this guy's come from nothing. He's just a wrestling fan, like we said.
Yeah.
He's stepping into an industry he doesn't know. When he steps into his new school, day one, he befriends someone right away. He's relatively new, a little bit better than him. They're around the same age. This ends up becoming his kind of friend for basically the entire movie.
Okay.
The catch is, though, his dad is the head coach. the head trainer. He's a former professional wrestler that maybe never got to like WWE levels, but he's been on the independent. Maybe he did like the likes of a Ring of Honor or did any of these. So he's well known enough. He has connections, and he's good enough to run a wrestling school, but he never quite got to the point of being like a WWE superstar.
Right.
But he's the coach, and this guy that he befriends is the coach's son.
Right.
And that's kind of, because that's quite, stuff like that happens quite a lot. And the idea I kind of wanted to have was that maybe he's playing the two guys against each other because they're friends. Maybe a little bit of nepotism comes in here, where like the son is getting a couple of more opportunities than this guy, and instead of our protagonist, like, even though he's probably working harder, maybe he's even a better wrestler. And then you're working with both, they have this rivalry as friends, but again, it's another roadblock in the way, which is the father figure. But the father figure, he kind of has the connections. He's the one that could probably get you that tryout and stuff. So you kind of have to win him over. But is he going to give it to the son? Is he not? Is he going to give it to him? Is he going to hold him back for the sake of getting his son into one of these prominent positions? And I think there's something we can work with there. Stuff like that happens in the wrestling business all the time.
I love it. No, I really do. And I think I've got a theory these days that like nepotism is going to be like one of the next big social wars that we're going to go through. Like I see it resonate and it's bubbling up more and more. So anything related to that, I think, is actually very much in the current zeitgeist. If it's not now, I think that's like the next big uproar online. You know, you can even see this with LeBron James and Bronny, where LeBron James plays for the Lakers and he gets his son to play for the Lakers.
With his son or something like that.
Yeah, it's like he's got his son is now a Laker. His son had 1 year of college, and part of that year he was actually medically disqualified because of a heart condition, and his stats don't add up. But like they want the narrative of the very first father-son team in the NBA, and it's like, yeah, but that makes sense. But somebody didn't make it to the NBA because LeBron James' son. So I think that nepotism is a really relevant and interesting kind of concept for this relationship. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Is this somebody that he meets when he's 18 and then that he meets again when he's 26 years old? Or is this somebody he only meets at 26?
I think it should be he moves town for his shoot job, and he's kind of half given up on the idea of wrestling. But when he moves for a career opportunity completely outside of wrestling, when he arrives there, maybe he, like, if I was writing it as like you're watching it like a movie, you'd have him, maybe he's finishing like a long shift of work, like fucking like Rabbit working at a steel mill, whatever job he's doing, and like on his walk home, he hears like a crashing noise and the noise of a crowd, and he turns around and looks, and there's like a local dive bar that's like running a wrestling show or something like that, and he steps in. As soon as he steps into this wrestling show, he walks in, there's maybe 50 people watching this really cruddy independent wrestling show. It brings it all back to him. It makes him think about the love he had for wrestling. Maybe because of the bad experience, he stopped watching wrestling completely. It wasn't really on his mind anymore because he had been hurt so much. And then he walks in and he has this experience, and it brings it all back. And then maybe through this event, maybe he's going to leave the event, he sees a flyer on the ground or a poster up that says, "Want to be a pro wrestler? There's a school in the area." And then that kind of wakes up, and he's like, "Well, I'll go do it." And again, this is a version of what happened to me, but kind of a bit more of a structured version, I guess. Like,
I'm thinking that from my own experience too, before I got into marketing, before I became a writer, I was actually a bartender, and the experience for bartending really taught me everything I know about marketing and everything I know about writing. And it was just, you have to engage with so many different people. You have to be a bit of a showman. You have to be a bit of a salesman. You have to be a bit of a security force as well. So as you were saying about moves town and he's working a job and 8 Mile at the steel mill, I think there's something about bartending that could actually lend to.
He could be working in a bar, and they could run the show in the bar that he's working in just by chance.
Yeah.
Like he's working there, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to run a wrestling show," and he's like, "Oh shit, wrestling, okay."
Yeah, because there's a lot of skills you develop in that particular field, which you don't think are relevant until you actually get into
Mm,
those other pursuits, and you go, "Oh my gosh!" Like I'm
yeah.
actually, I learned so much about how to kind of qualify characters that I meet. There was a point in
Hmm.
bartender where these two women would come to the bar, and just my mind would just go Pinot Grigio. Don't know why, but then they come up and they just to talk to each other, going, "What should we have?" I don't know. I like that white wine. Yeah, two Pinot Grigio, please. For the life of me, I don't know why I would just kind of predict what people's orders were, but there was something about seeing them kind of checking out the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they present themselves, and that kind of thing is very beneficial in the world of writing and marketing, but also can
Yeah.
be very beneficial and applied to professional wrestling. So I think that would be really cool if and it's
Great.
also a job where he's like you can really like the bartender is a great job, but you could position it in the film with him like changing kegs and mopping the floor and kind of the more grunt aspects
Mm-hmm.
of it to really showcase like he's
Yeah.
dissatisfied with his life. And as you
Mm-hmm.
say, that's actually a pretty decent way to kind of swing into the wrestling where it chased him where he's like I went
Yeah.
to a
Like
different town to avoid it, and all of a sudden it just landed right in
mm,
front of me.
like if you don't want to be too obvious with the whole like they run a show in his bar, you could easily just have him leave the bar, lock up, he's walking home, and he stumbles upon a show that way. Maybe that seems a bit more realistic if it happens like that. But either way, I think the bar work, I think that's perfect.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So yeah, I think he had that like traumatic experience that first time around, and basically he stopped
Mm-hmm.
watching it. Tear the posters down, that kind of vibe. Then
Mm-hmm.
he grows up. You can even have a maybe it's a montage. It might not need to be, but eventually you kind of see that he's packed up. He's probably not. He's probably hasn't succeeded in college, or he's just kind of like floating, and he ends up just working in a bar in another town. Perfectly fine. That's happens to
Hey,
lots of
listen,
people.
he al- he al-
Yeah.
he was always meant to be a wrestler. That's what it is, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I like the vibe of it is I don't think he wouldn't have been ready as an 18-year-old at that 7 year where the 7 years where he had to develop new skills and basically build a personality. Now he's ready. I really like that kind of
You could
destiny
also
concept.
showcase.
Hey, and that's your savior of destiny
Yeah,
as well.
and I think as well, like, oh, I, like as well, you could like the earlier stages of the film. Maybe he is out of shape. That's why he can't do any of the drills and stuff. And part of your little montage, you could show that he's going to the gym. He is working out more. He is getting in shape. He doesn't realize that he's doing it to step back in the ring. He's just doing it for himself because maybe he feels that bit of shame from not being able to do or perform the first time he tried wrestling because he wasn't physically able, you know. So
Yeah.
you could show that, oh, he's working this job, he's doing whatever, but he's also after getting himself in quite good shape as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then he shows up to this wrestling show. That makes sense. Um, Something
Hmm.
needs to happen there, though. I don't think it's a thing where he pulls a poster, like a thing off the wall, or like the phone number on the cut up tab. I don't think it's that. I think
Yeah.
something
Mhm.
more impactful. Something needs to happen like to him rather than like it's a poster on the wall is a very passive kind of moment
Mhm.
where I think we need to see something happen. I'm not sure if it's
Okay,
involving
so
interacting with the wrestler, but I
well,
don't know.
does he see a match that's going on and maybe someone is doing something like really good? Maybe someone's in there having like a really good match, even though it isn't this grimy bar in front of 50 people, but it ends up being the guy that becomes his friend. So maybe this guy is already an independent wrestler. Maybe he's only had a couple of matches, but he's already showing that potential that this guy is going to be really good. So maybe seeing this guy perform, maybe he bumps into him after the match and he has an interaction with him, which kind of, because I want the friend to kind of be a bit of an anchor for him as well. So maybe
Totally.
he sees him. Yeah.
I think it needs to be more than that. I think it could be something
Okay.
like the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, pull someone from the crowd kind of vibe. and maybe somebody
Mm.
gets him to like interact, like they stick a microphone in his face and he's like, oh no, and they're like, no, just go with it. Like it could be that friend who's like, just go with it, like just insult me, like, and it's this, it becomes an invitation where previously he was kicked out. Now there's this one little moment where somebody gives them an invitation, and this is the friend, the son of the coach. But I think it needs to be something like where somebody goes to him, he's nervous, he's like, no, like I've got a bad experience with this, and they're like, just go for it, and they give him the microphone, and he kind of has a good comeback, like this kind of quick-witted moment where the crowd actually goes like, whoa, and he gets a little jazzed by it, but the wrestler saw something there going, that was pretty good, like that, there was something there, and then afterward he's probably like leaving and somebody goes, yo, wait up a second, and that's where we kind of have the introduction to this. Because I mean, even in Boogie Nights,
I love that.
Like,
they invite him to the school.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to like, it's like he's like, I gotta go do this again. Where like these guys are like, no, you should come to our school.
Yeah,
you would be really good at that.
They see something in him.
Yeah, okay.
I think because even if you remember, the beginning of Boogie Nights is actually this. Burt Reynolds just sees the waiter, the Mark Wahlberg just picking up dishes, and kind of follows him into the kitchen. So this actually feels a little bit more direct than this kind of happenstance moment where it's like, hey, look, crowd interaction is a very integral part of the show. And somebody who just kind of showed up to be passive and then is kind of forced to reacts well, and then then they engage with him, because that's also how it goes from what I remember when I read about it is there was wrestlers who were at the gym or there was people at a gym and a wrestler comes up and says like you should be a wrestler. I think Sid Vicious, who just passed away recently, I think that's how he was discovered. He was just like in a gym one day and somebody came up to him and said, why are you not a wrestler? Like, you're like the prototype wrestler. And that's how he got in, which is somebody walks up to him and goes, you should do this, So I think that could be a really good, good way. So then,
I agree.
We probably have that moment where he's kind of refusing it. He's turning down the call, but eventually decides to go there. He's very nervous. He's very cautious. This did not go well the last time. And this is where I think what you were talking about going, we need to like quicken the pace of the experiences he's learned pays off. I think it's what we've just seen in a bit of his background as a bartender. I think we see payoff right now in the training, and that's how they go, oh, this guy's got something, because he kind of realizes that he's a bit quicker with his wit. We could actually make it a thing where like he's a really good talker. So he's a bit clumsy in the ring because he can't be perfect at everything. But maybe it's like, this guy can talk, and talking's money in wrestling. So it's like, maybe this is where he finds his calling too. So he tried with no personality too early in life, and he wasn't physically fit, and he failed. But then he had this experience working in other industries, and now all of a sudden he's got a bit of a personality and he's got a bit of a quick wit to him, and that's his entry point. And he didn't have that when he was 18.
I really like that.
Nice. So then what happens next?
You want to go then like when well, the whole thing I wanted to build around was maybe there's an opportunity and then there's a decision from this father character. So say they come in, he becomes best friend with this guy, they go through the whole process of training and him getting to the point where he is good enough, I guess, to be a wrestler. Maybe he has his first match. That's a big win. That's a big up moment. And I'd like to kind of towards maybe the father, through the father's connections, there's a possible opportunity. Maybe that opportunity is to get signed to a bigger indie promotion, maybe the likes of Ring of Honor or even an AEW or something like that. And then I kind of wanted to go with the whole, like, maybe one person can get in. Is he going to choose the son, or is he going to choose our guy? And you want to kind of have that struggle where you probably know, and the father knows deep down that our guy's better. He's a better promo. He's starting to become a better wrestler. But is he going to pick his own son over him? And I'd like to kind of build to like an eventual climax where like maybe they both get put in a match together, maybe tagging together or something, where like their performance in this one match is going to dictate who's the person that gets this contract and finally gets to, you know, ride off into the sunset and make the career out of it. And I think we can work something around that as well.
No, that seems very solid. I really enjoy that. Yeah, let's follow that logic, because then it kind of turns into a little bit of Warrior with the two brothers feuding for like, or in the tournament. That's a fantastic film where you actually don't know who you would rather win, and it's very rare where it's kind of like two protagonists. You know, you're like, I follow both of them. I completely understand both of their journeys, and I would prefer if they both won. So this has a little bit of that vibe to it. What you were saying there actually reminded me of another conversation I had with a wrestler years ago. I was chatting to, he's not a wrestler anymore. He's an actor now, but he dabbled in that for a bit. And he had this really interesting story about being in this tournament. And the politics behind the scenes, and he actually was in better shape than most of the other wrestlers, and they didn't like that. They actually thought that like where he would go, well, no, that I should have a six-pack, I should be well built, but in that environment where he's the only one who kind of looks like the standout, they get standoffish with him. And so he has this person that he thinks is a friend, a colleague, you know. And completely correct me, like this is what he told me, so I've never done this, but he was telling me that at the time, whenever you're in the ring and you're pinning someone and you're going to win, like as you pin them and they hit the 3 count, that you whisper thank you to that person as the third strike, the third pin goes down, and that it becomes like an automatic thing, right? So he was saying to me that there was this one moment where he was lying down, like he was supposed to kick out, and the person pinning him said thank you too early, and because of that he didn't kick out, because he kind of got like habitual to the word thank you means you're pinned, and he didn't kick out, and he lost, quote quote, the match. And then that created a rift between the two, because he thought, that guy meant it. Like he knew that wasn't the time, but he fooled me. And this is in front of like decision makers. And this person basically won, but he looked like he made the mistake because he didn't kick out. And I've always found that to be such a convoluted, but very interesting dynamic that could only exist in professional wrestling. But I don't even know if it can fit into the narrative we're trying to build. But I remember when he told me that, I just thought it was super fascinating. And just, again, it's only something that could, like, if it never fit in any other sport.
Is there a direction you go in where maybe then like the son character, the friend character gets an opportunity first because of something similar like this? Maybe it is some sort of etiquette issue or whatever, or basically a version of what you said. And then the friend character maybe then gets into the middle in promotion, but then we build to him trying to get his friend an opportunity. And like we could end on then like this is his opportunity, like the final big match to try and get himself, but the friend is already there. So maybe you have that up and down moment then as well. You have him finally coming in, he's a wrestler, he's done it. And then maybe he blows the first opportunity because it's not his fault, and we build to another opportunity again. Or is that too much up and down the whole way? You're the expert, you tell me.
No, I think we want to keep it a bit more simple, but I think that could be something early on that we could actually build in tension between the two. So if that was the case, then they'd have to wrestle each other before that big climactic moment. But if you did that earlier, you've built a seed of distrust, which really pays off in the end, because you don't know how this friend is going to behave. He's actually kind of
Like,
stabbed him in the back already.
but you know it was him that done it. So maybe
Yeah.
that's like them having a singles match, and the friend intentionally fucks it up. But then when they both have the big opportunity, maybe they're in a tag match together as a team, where he's kind of going into it going, can I really trust this guy? Is he going to fuck me over again unintentionally and ruin
Yeah.
my moment because we're tag team partners? Because now he's like, does the friend unintentionally kind of become the villain?
I think so, because we need an antagonist, and
Yeah.
he's perfectly set
Yeah.
up for it. I mean, the coach
Yeah.
is kind of an antagonizing force because he's making decisions. But
Mhm.
if you're going to set up that friend who's also going to be an opponent in
Mm.
the ring as the final boss, basically, we're going to want them to have friction going into it. And
Yeah.
I think knowing the collaborative nature of professional wrestling, I think going into it with that kind of mistrust as
Yeah.
the Montreal screw job kind of
And I
moment
think,
of like, is this
or
person
what you said,
going
like
to do
you
something about
referenced,
me?
like you referenced Whiplash earlier, and I think the whole setup, like towards the end of that movie, spoilers, where like he sets him up and he originally like he doesn't give him the set list, and they're playing completely different songs, and he's
Yeah.
intentionally putting out in front of this big audience to just bury him. So like
Yeah.
the example
Yeah.
you said about the thank you thing doesn't really exist in wrestling as much as it probably did back then.
Okay.
I think to make it a bit more obvious, you probably have they plan a match and there's a series of things that go wrong because because it's the father figure, maybe the father relays the information to the son of what type of match he wants, but then
Okay.
he doesn't exactly give the protagonist all the information, you know. So maybe examples would be they have 5 minutes, but maybe he tells them that they have 10 minutes, and maybe the finish they want to be this. He tells them it's a different finish. Maybe they say no outside violence or no weapons or no bleeding or something like that. But then the friend maybe tells him the opposite to kind of
Okay.
sabotage him. Like, you know, like a
Right.
good example is bleeding. Like, cause like that's such a no-no in wrestling now where people would never intentionally, for those that aren't wrestling fans, as wrestlers do this really idiotic thing where they would hide a blade in their wrist tape, get hit with like a chair or a foreign object at some point, hide down, take out the blade, slice their forehead open, and they would simulate that they're bleeding from the chair shot. That's kind of a big no-no in wrestling. It happens occasionally in big matches in WWE. So like that could be a good example where they're having this tryout match and maybe it could potentially be on TV or there's like reputable people watching and he's like, absolutely no blade jobs. You're not going to cut yourself. But the friend could go and say, oh, we should do a blade job. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. He's like, oh, it's going to make the match more epic. But then he does the blade job, but he's the one that gets the heat for it because he's done it on himself. And then the
Yeah.
friend just pleads ignorance.
That
And then
makes
he's losing that opportunity because he's done a big no-no. And the friend is like, well, I didn't tell him to do that. And he gets the opportunity. And I think deep down, it's the only reason this sabotage is happening because when they start training together, when they start working together, when they start wrestling, the friend knows this guy's better than him. He's a better promo. He's already becoming a better wrestler. And he doesn't want to be his friend anymore because suddenly he's here and then the guy is starting to get to here. And once he gets up to here, his perspective on the relationship will completely change.
I like all of what you just said. So I think we pour that all into the pot. Like, no, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And I think you could even, because again, we're not literally building the story from beginning to end. It's kind of, we're evolving it as we go. I think you could even have this friend at the beginning be a bit of a mentor character to him, and kind of showing him the ropes. And he's like, you should use social media and like, see, it's like you're an independent contractor, like really. So it's about you. You can take in some phrases I heard from like legends of wrestling about like that you're in there to sell yourself. This is an opportunity to sell you, and if you sell you, then you're asked to come back again and sell more, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I think you could have it where he ends up quickly surpassing the friend. So like maybe he starts to go, I'll use social media, and he gets a gimmick or kind of a hook or some kind of unique character that starts resonating with people. And soon enough, he's
Like he would
getting more.
100% have like a really catchy catchphrase, like because every famous wrestler, and I think the movie would need it, like his version of like what or it doesn't matter or whatever it is, he would definitely come up with a phrase that at these shows people would be saying it, people would be buying shirts with this particular, like his version of or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that would be quite cool as well. And I think as well, you probably get the fatter, even though the nepotism is there. At the end of the day, he's still a carny wrestling promoter that wants to have someone that he can kind of, ride the coattails of to stardom. If any of these guys make it and they go all the way to independent wrestling, they go all the way to WWE, that's his ticket back in as well. Do you know that kind of way? So I think at some point the father even starts to turn on the son a little bit, because he knows this guy's going to 6 more. Yeah,
he has to, because the son has to be motivated to screw him over in that one match with the misinformation. And the misinformation is to shut for his father. It's like the father. I love that too. I really enjoy the idea that the father's that carny who's like, oh, I can ride the coattails of somebody back into the big time again, and even step on his own son, which shows the cutthroat nature of this business, which gets the son,
and that exists
really,
in the rest of it.
yeah, the son is like hyper motivated to like find his common ground. He's not winning with the skills in the ring. He's not winning with the personality or the gimmick or the catchphrase. Or I think we won't figure it out now, but I think it's more than just a catchphrase. I think it's using and utilizing social media in a unique way that really galvanizes a fan base fast. He's found this moment or this way to articulate his matches that hasn't really been done or seen, and it catches on fast. So now he's like, and we actually can follow this person who doesn't have the experience, but he has that moment where he turns around, he shows up to a match, and like there's a ton of people there for him, and you get that feeling of like the audience are like, oh my god, like he comes out. I actually have a very specific moment for this. I have a very specific moment. It's from Oh Brother Where Art Thou. Have you seen that film with George Clooney by the Coen brothers? Where
of course,
they record an album, The Man of Constant Sorrow. Then they go on their adventure. Then they get on stage in beards and they sing it, and the crowd goes crazy. And George Clooney and his crew have no idea that this has become a hit. So the looks they give each other are just so like, I get really jazzed up with that scene, because it's just like this amazing emotional moment. And I think if we could do something like that where he didn't realize that what he did really struck a chord, and then when he shows up to like maybe his second match, there's a ton of people there, which puts more pressure on him, and the audience can like really get behind him, because now he has jumped over being a rookie. He now has to perform like a professional. I think there could be something really magical about that moment.
And I think like there's a really good example, not to segue too far, but like when I first started in the wrestling business, I'd only had one match, and like kind of disguised the fact that like I wasn't a very good wrestler. I was still learning. We came up with this outrageous gimmick. Myself and my original tag team partner were called the Super Nintenbros, and we were this like, nerdy guys that just happened to be wrestlers that were video game fanatics and blah 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 blah. But you and I and Dave O'Neill decided that it would be to go and produce and make a really high quality, high concept promo. And in Irish independent wrestling, you never had that. Every promo was just a guy in his car on selfie mode, or someone recording a guy against a wall with graffiti on it, whatever else it is. Nobody had the production, the lighting, the editing that we had in that promo. We sat down in a coffee shop and we wrote out the whole promo step by step. Dave shot and edited it. And when that got released, like we blew up in Irish wrestling. Like, and it was too soon, because obviously we didn't have these, but we had everybody in the country. People were sharing it on Facebook. I had people, you could see comments from random people I didn't know going, oh, this is a reason you should come to this wrestling show, because you like videos games and these guys are interesting characters. So it shows, if you catch something unique like this, like it can catch fire. And I think our protagonist, something like this does happen, where maybe he has, even if it's not just a catchphrase, maybe it's just that one viral moment where he does something that the whole wrestling community is all sharing amongst themselves. He doesn't have social media. He doesn't realize he's blown up until, as you said, he walks out on that show and they're all there to see him.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I didn't really realize that promo had that much impact. That's actually really fun to hear. So I remember that.
It really did. Like, and I think then, like,
Like where I was like, it's a call to
And I
action,
think
a
as well,
CTA, and I think you used that as the CTA
yeah,
became your finishing
yeah,
name.
the call to action. Yeah. Well, like even like then I think when that starts to happen, like maybe even though the antagonist does eventually become the friend, but maybe when all this is happening and our protagonist is starting to blow up, maybe you have that moment where you see the father pull the son aside and he's quite aggressive and he's quite vicious and he's getting under his skin to say, are you going to let this motherfucker take your spot? Are you going to, you're
Yeah,
my son. You're supposed to be the next, like it's like Cody Rhodes and Dusty Rhodes. You're supposed to be the next me. What the hell are you going to do about it? So even though the friend ultimately becomes the villain, he's doing it through the pressure that the father has given him to basically fill his boots.
yeah, it makes sense. I totally agree, because even the father will ride that money train, but he's like, look, I'm gonna go with him. Like, you got to figure this out. Like, and I like those kind of dynamic antagonists as well, where you actually can feel, you can understand the motivation of the villain. Basically, I think that's very rich in texture. So yeah, again, we won't figure out what the viral moment is. That's ludicrous in this
Yeah, we
scenario.
got that. Yeah.
But so yeah, I think we've got the first.
Someone will watch this podcast and steal the idea.
Yeah, I think if I sat down for like 20 minutes with you, I think we'd probably come up with something that would be that we could try, but that's
Oh yeah,
not what we're trying to do right
definitely.
now. But let's continue on. So I think we jump back and forth, which is perfectly fine. But I think we're past now the moment where he wrestled his friend and the friend betrayed him.
Yeah.
I think we should
I
kind of
think the friend
evolve.
betrays him, like you said.
Yeah, I think
Go on.
one thing I would love to get into this would be wrestler's court. I don't know why. There's something that I just think a layman or a non-wrestling fan would find that concept so bewildering that I would love to find a way to get that into here. And basically, wrestler's court is when like a wrestler breaks an unwritten rule in the locker room, and then as a deterrent, they're brought to a unofficial jury and a courtroom where a wrestler is the judge, and there's a wrestler who's a prosecutor. He has his own defense attorney, and they basically bring to trial his grievance, and he has to defend himself. And can he convince a jury of his peers that he is not in the wrong? And I think what happened was it was always the Undertaker from WWE that was the judge. And if you brought everybody pizza and whiskey, you pretty much got away with it. But either way, I would just love to bring that to film, to see that in a cinematic sense and bring the audience and the protagonist into that journey of like, what did I do wrong? And it was like this minor mistake, and you just experience that journey, and it could turn out that the best friend was the one who ratted him out, and that kind of sows more seeds with that relationship. So it serves a couple of different functions, but in general, I'd love
that. I think the idea of like he does the blade job like we said.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a friend's idea. That's all set up, that he was fully set up, right? So that's what I think. If we do that for like the match itself, that they go with the whole we should do a blade. I don't think we should do a blade. Oh no, it's fine. And then we already know that the friend has been told specifically no blade jobs, because maybe there's a senior person from the promotion that they're going to go that they're trying out for is in the crowd watching it, and they don't want to blade in front of him because he wouldn't like it, because his promotion is maybe on TV or something like that.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you do your version of wrestler's court, where it's the promoter, the father, who is he's the judge and he's setting a sentence for this guy. But maybe that promoter is also backstage because he's furious. He's seen the blade job. And maybe the punishment through this is that like he basically gets told he can't work for this promotion, or they would never do business with him because he did something really irresponsible with that. But then maybe you lean towards then later on when he gets the final opportunity, it's true to friend, but maybe the friend is like manipulating him or trying to control him by bringing him in under his terms or something like that. I think he could probably work the wrestler's court into the end of whatever the mistake ends up being, whether it's the blade job or whatnot.
Yeah, I think even you'd have that growth moment too, where he knows he's been a bit railroaded because of this. Like he broke a rule he didn't know existed. It's unfair that like what happened to him is unfair, but he actually like you build it up where it's like you defend yourself, you throw yourself at the mercy of the court, and like, or no, you don't throw yourself at the mercy of the court. What you do is you put up the best defense you can, and like you're fervent with your adamant that you did nothing wrong. And maybe he actually takes a high road here where he actually goes, it was me. And he knows it wasn't. They actually know it wasn't because he's been like set up. They're like, they're basically winding him up.
Yeah.
And he actually takes the brunt of everything. He's like, look, I accept full responsibility. It shouldn't have been me. And he takes it. He takes complete ownership over it, which actually flips it and makes him more of a stand-up guy. He didn't realize all of this, but the audience do. And even the promoter who basically was trying to go like, let's take him down a peg, or the friend is trying to take him down. I think I still love your idea that the promoter also wants to ride his coattails. So he doesn't want to derail him as much. He just kind of wants to make sure his son gets their opportunity. But I think if he actually did plead guilty to this, even though he didn't do it, but it just shows like he's a trustworthy collaborator, and the rest of the audience, like the rest of the wrestlers go, I can trust this guy, because isn't part of the whole thing, or isn't the main thing, do you trust a person in the ring with your body?
Respect.
And this guy shows ultimate respect when he didn't have to. He took,
and I think like as well, it's like it's a life lesson for him, and he's kind of saying to himself, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to let somebody come and tell me what I should do. I'll go to the promoter myself. I'll seek that information, and I'll make sure that I'm not going to let somebody else dictate what I do, especially when it's something high risk. So it's a learning experience for him as well. But as you said, that maturity, maybe there's guys in the locker room that find out or dare or know deep down that it's a setup. And when they see him own up to it, he earns their respect, because they know, everyone knows, apart from maybe the promoter or the guy that's there watching the show, they're the only people that know, but everyone else in the locker room knows what this guy has done. And as you said, the fact that he stepped up and just took that responsibility, he's earning everybody else's respect. I really like that. I think that's cool.
So then it makes me think that we have to introduce another character early on. We're not going to go back and repeat this, but it's kind of that wise veteran who has never really made it, but he knows everybody. And he's kind of a quiet, kind of loner type. And even though our guy doesn't, he loses opportunity because he basically got politicked out of it, how he performs in wrestler's court, this kind of wise veteran might be the one who gets like a decision maker to show up to a match, and he's like, I'll wrestle the kid. And he makes him look fantastic. So
that's really
it's
good.
like,
That's really
it's like
good.
he because of his integrity, because of his respect, that there's this veteran who's like, come with me, kid. And the veteran is the one who's supposed to win. I actually heard this was a thing with Scott Hall and Chris Jericho in WCW, where Scott Hall was like from the NWO, big main event star, and Chris Jericho was on the rise, and they were supposed to wrestle each other. And Scott Hall was supposed to go over, but he said, listen, Chris, go over on me and I'll take the heat. And then Chris Jericho did beat him, and then Scott Hall got yelled at, and he's like, whatever, man, like, let the kid win. Like, I know those two actually had friction and heat with each other, but I like that idea. Like, if you can kind of mind that moment where the veteran's supposed to beat him, and the veteran's like, I actually brought somebody here. He doesn't tell him this, but like, he actually brought someone to be in the audience, and then he makes a real point to like shine this rookie up. And all of a sudden is like, he's back on form again. And it's very difficult to ignore him. Like, the decision maker goes, oh, why is that guy not in like the fatal 4-way at the end? And the booker's like, oh no, he is.
Have an opportunity.
He is. So he kind of crams him in there. And so this match he didn't get because he got screwed over. So it was supposed to be a one versus one-on-one match. Is the crescendo, the final moment turns into a triple threat match, a three-way dance because of this opportunity. So he finds his way in, but now he's doing this thing where he's like, do I trust my friend at the very end? Is this guy going to screw me over again? And I don't know what we do from there, but like basically, I think
there's there. Like, there's a great example, another great example of that thing where DDP always tells a story where he was working with Macho Man for like months and months, and they had this rivalry. And Macho Man just says to him one day backstage, "It's like, oh, I think I want to take the Diamond Cutter tonight," and he was like, what? And for anyone that doesn't know, the Diamond Cutter is DDP's finishing move, which was a strong move that no one ever kicked out of. And him saying, I think I want to take that move, was him telling DDP, I want you to beat me. And that was the ultimate respect for someone as big as Macho Man Randy Savage. But I've seen incidents in wrestling. I know of incidents, I'm not going to say, in the last couple of years where people have been told there's a certain finish of the match and they've changed it out there. Sometimes just to surprise the person that thought they were going to lose, but they actually were going to win. That's the big setup. And match has been just changed completely on the fly. So stuff like that not only happens backstage, but actually happens in the ring as they're going.
That's very cool. You know? Yeah, I think there's something there. There's a bit of a mentor figure that we don't really have. So introducing that character, it kind of pays off the purpose of the
does like, is it too obvious now? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, if this old guy's there kind of the whole time, but he doesn't really respect the protagonist, he doesn't want anything to do with anyone because he's an old vet, he's a little bit bitter. Is he that one person that maybe hears the discussions around this cutting incident and hears the protagonist, not ratting the guy out and standing up for himself? Like, he's the one that sees him, and that's how he kind of earns his respect. Like, this whole idea of him not spilling the beans, that this guy witnesses that whole thing, or is that too obvious?
No, I think that's the vibe we go for. We might not need to have the scene where he sees, like, he overhears it, but if we make sure the audience is aware that he knows, like, I think this should be common knowledge with the entire locker room that this guy got screwed over, but that's just how it goes, kid, but because the guy takes like full responsibility, this wise old veteran's like, they don't build them like that anymore. And he just goes, look, I'll take him. I'll let me wrestle him. Like, it's basically I'd like to take the Diamond Cutter. He's like, I'd like to wrestle a kid tonight,
I love that story.
Like, will you? It's like, I'll take him, and he wins. And again, the whole thing I think makes sense he brings one of his networking contacts there. He sees that person, or he puts on a show. Like, all of a sudden, this kid who did, because don't forget, our hero was making a way for himself on social media. So there's an audience that's building behind him, and all of a sudden he's cut out from under his feet. This one other performance in front of a decision maker probably gets to the point where they go, so what are you doing with this kid? And the promoter is kind of backed into a corner where he's like, I actually have to showcase him in this showcase event.
Yeah. And I love this idea of, like, maybe when the news breaks, that's where you do one of those like quick kind of montage edits where, like, it's people talking on Twitter, maybe it's people on wrestling podcasts talking about this guy that they love because of his viral moments and because he grasps the audience, that he's finally getting an opportunity. Suddenly now the whole wrestling world, or the independent wrestling world, is a buzz because this guy that they love, because of his catchphrase or the stuff that we never really nailed down, that they're going to turn up for this show as well, And I like the idea of, like, this is your big climax, like this one match, like where you've got this triple threat, you've got just a random guy and the two guys. And then I like the idea of, like, you can feed into a lot of the backstage stuff then, where maybe there's interactions with him and the veteran about, like, maybe he's giving him a bit of a pep talk. Maybe the veteran and the dad have a little bit of a clash backstage, a little bit of a conversation. The friend is telling him, listen, you better not fuck this up. This is my opportunity too. And there's a whole, everyone has a bit of an investment in what's going on, but they all have their own kind of motives with it as well. Like, maybe the dad is a little bit conflicted because he kind of thinks that our guy will do better, but he still wants his son because this is his opportunity. And, like, you're building this all through little moments they're all having backstage that's making this match to the viewer seem like the most important match that could have ever happened. even though
I
it's
like
not. It's a
that.
match in front of a couple of thousand people. Like, you know?
No, but I think it's
And then
important to
what you
them.
actually do,
You build the stakes for the
yeah,
emotions of the
I think so.
characters. It could even be something, I don't know how, if you want to get to the level of like deciding who wins, but it could be like back and forth. So I've heard that in WWE, how wrestlers find out they're going to win the big championship like the day of it. Like they're actually like it's that surprising where they go, if I knew that, I would have flown my family
Yeah.
in, but I didn't realize. And plans
Mm-hmm.
change constantly. So it could be like, while I actually really enjoy what you said, like the dynamics of all these different people with their motivations, but
Mm-hmm.
put into that the changing of plans. And it's like, so who's winning? Who's like, and you get to the point where it's like, I don't even know what we're doing here. It's like, who's
I
winning
think as
tonight?
well, it's very important as well, because and this is something that's really important in pro wrestling, because as much as people think winning and losing matters, I think we can start by showing that it matters. But I think ultimately, the random guy that we don't know ends up being the guy that is going to win the match. And I think that's quite important, because now our protagonist and antagonist, the only motivation they have now is to go out and just have the best possible match that they can have, because neither of them are going to win. And that's an important thing in wrestling, because you'll turn up and be like told, oh, you're losing in 8 minutes, but you want to go out and have the best fucking 8 minutes you could, like, do you know, that kind of way? So I think it's important to start with one of them thinking they're going to win, but then finding out that this other guy is going to win the match, because at the end of the day, the winning isn't important, if that makes sense. Or does the movie need somebody to win, because that's significant in that? That's why I kind of think you should make that decision.
No, I think that's the right instinct. I don't even think we should, as an audience, know who's going to win this. I think like letting them go into
Mm,
it with a bit of confusion, and like let us as an audience
mm,
kind of experience that concept. But the third guy, the person we really don't
mm,
really know of, wins. I'd even go further,
mm.
and that guy gets the contract. I'd even, because
Yeah.
it's the
Well,
Rolling Stones mantra of, you don't get what you want, you get what you need. And I don't think our hero
yeah,
needs to get the contract. I think what this person needed to do is like to believe in themselves and to learn that this is the career
mm,
for them, and that their opportunity might be the
yeah,
next one, but they've
yeah.
learned enough to continue on this path regardless. But there's something really funny
Oh, yeah.
about the
And you want to leave that
three-man
open.
dance, or the three-person wrestling match,
Mm,
and the two people feuding don't win. Like they don't win the match and they don't win the contract.
that's important. That's really
And,
important.
and it's like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
But I
And the
think as
audience,
well, like
what? Because
if
wrestling's
you
not
wanted to
about
go
winning or
really,
losing.
it isn't, yeah. And I think if you want to go really extreme with it, this might be too extreme, but I like the idea, because stuff like this happens all the time in wrestling. Like, potentially because the best friend is so desperate to win this contract, does he do something to fuck it up? Like, one of the ideas I had was that, like, maybe our guy wins the contract, but something happens in the match, and maybe not his fault, that maybe the friend gets like a career ending injury or something like that. So like he basically wins the contract or becomes successful, but at the expense of his friend ending his career, even if it's not his fault. Like, do you want to get really dramatic in that sense, where like the friend wants to do maybe a really risky move that he doesn't want to do, but they know that if they could pull off this one move, that could be the difference that would make them stand out in the triple threat. But the friend, our guy, knows that maybe that move is a bit too risky. Maybe it's a Canadian destroyer or something a bit more, something really high risk. They do the high risk move, it pays off. Our guy looks like a superstar, but it like breaks the guy's neck, or doesn't kill him, but like ends his career. So he's winning it at the expense of his friend losing everything. Or you do it the other way, but I don't think our protagonist should get injured or anything like that. I think it should be. I think the friend getting injured might be something, but what are your thoughts?
I like it. No, I don't think we go to that level though. I do still enjoy the idea that neither of them win. I
Mm-hmm.
do like the comeuppance of the friend getting injured because of the desperation. Maybe because a lot of the old school wrestlers talk about the showmanship and how those moves don't matter, that it's engaging with the audience. And this could be something out of desperation, that the friend attempts and it doesn't pay off, so he gets injured, and maybe that's the audible that's called, and the third guy wins because of the audible, like because of the injury. That feels,
or maybe like
that feels nice, and
maybe
the other guy really kicks off. It actually gets into a point where they listen to the crowd. So this is what I understand is the difference of pre-scripted matches where people have memorized the moves versus listening to the audience. And I think the ending could be something more in keeping with the audience starts catching away for the third guy. And our protagonist goes, let's follow that. And because of an injury that's just happened,
I think
they actually go that way.
And
and
even
he
better,
goes, I've made my opponent better. And because of that, we know as a audience,
there's even a really good way to kind of put a wrestling twist on that. So maybe they planned a specific match. They planned up to a point. Everyone knows what's going to happen. The friend goes to do the big move. He gets injured. He's gone. Now we're in a situation where it's just the two guys, and stuff like this happens all the time. And by the way, people that say wrestling is scripted, half of wrestling is scripted. Half of it is exactly what you said. You're feeling the crowd. You're calling it out there. I've had matches where I've gone out and not known what I'm going to do, and just figuring it out there. That stuff happens all the time. But I like the idea of like maybe the friend gets injured, and maybe our protagonist and this other guy that ultimately wins have to go out and basically finish the match completely on the fly because the script is now gone out the window. The two of them are out there just feeling it, just wrestling, not knowing what's going to happen. But he ends up in that moment delivering, where it's like the veteran knows backstage, all the promoters know, everyone knows that they're off script now, but yet they even have a better performance. And he makes this guy that wins the contract look like $1 million fucking bucks. He makes him look like the biggest fucking superstar, but all in a completely unscripted, natural way because the guy got injured and he's out. I think that's a really high compliment you pay to a wrestler, to be able to go out and have matches like that on the fly and be able to work unplanned is like one of the highest compliments you can have as a wrestler. So I think that's how he earns the respect of everybody, by being able to perform with the other guy taken out of the equation and the plan thrown out the window.
I actually think that's so strong that that's probably the arc that we actually can go back and kind of filter in, where like as he's learning, he's trying to pre-plan too much stuff, and we kind of sprinkle in the organic moments are the ones that succeed for him, and he's kind of slowly learning that. But it leads to this moment where it's the difference between don't think, do, that kind of concept.
What if the old guy then,
listen
when
to
they
the
have
audience,
their
you got
match,
this. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like the older guy, when they have their match, maybe they're about to have the match, we can scale back a little bit, and he's like, oh, what are we going to do? And he's like, don't worry about it. And the old guy makes him go out and have a match completely on the fly, the good match that they have. And the old guy shows him in that moment that it's not about pre-planning everything. It's not about, structuring everything. It's about going out and just feeling the crowd, reacting to what they're doing, and responding accordingly. So the lesson the old man has taught him, he applies it in this moment at the very end. I think you're right that he needs to learn that he's not doing that and be taught how to do that, and then apply it at the very end.
I think that makes perfect sense, and that's the arc that we were basically lacking until now. It's like, yes, that's very clear, and I think that's actually what probably a lot of legitimate wrestlers go through, is you try to rehearse and construct the emotions of the match, but really by just listening to the audience and kind of engaging with them, inviting them to be part of the show is probably going to be where you succeed. And that's the lesson he learns, is to let go and just feel it rather than script it. And that climactic moment turns into like this incredible match with people going crazy, and the other guy gets the contract and our guy gets the respect, and maybe like a championship match at the next the local event or something. So he hasn't gotten there yet. He hasn't gotten there, but he's basically gotten all the tools to get there, and that's where we basically leave them off.
Yeah, I think as well, like, it's really important to recognize that the people watching, the wrestlers involved, the referee, the promoter, everyone knows exactly what's happening, that they're having this moment completely on the fly, but the audience doesn't know. And that's really important, because when the audience don't know, that makes it more special, because they're reacting as if it was scripted.
Yeah.
I like the idea of leaving the very end completely open. Really good movie I've seen is kind of an indie movie, but kind of a movie that started the poker boom. I used to be a professional poker player as well, by the way. With Matt Damon in it and Edward Norton, called Rounders, right?
Rounders,
a movie
yeah.
from the 90s, and it's a poker-based movie. John Malkovich is in it as well. It's a ridiculous movie, but it's great. And the movie, again, if you haven't seen Rounders,
I've seen it.
Whatever, an hour and a half into this podcast, Rounders spoiler. The very end of it, he says, it's like, last year the winner of the World Series of Poker won whatever $2 million. Like, is my name going to be on that prize? Like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And the movie ends with him leaving in a taxi. So the idea is, like, he's saying right now, what I want to do is be World Series of Poker champion. I'm going to go to Las Vegas. The most interesting part of everything that's going to happen in this narrative with this poker player is that going to Vegas and winning millions of dollars, and you never get to see that happen. He just leaves, and the audience is left with, is he going to do it? And I like the idea of ending our story in a similar way, where now he knows he has all of the tools, he has the respect, he has the recognition, he believes in himself. He's got over so much, but now it's left open. It's like, will he be able to use everything that he's accumulated in this whole story and turn it into a success story? And you're just going to have to leave it open. You know what I mean? I don't even think a championship opportunity, I think anything like that. I think it's just you're leaving it on, will I make it? I don't know, type of thing. I could be wrong though.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's it. Like, it could even be this kind of like, yeah, you're a good kid. Maybe you come to Florida sometime and we'll check you out, and it could even end with like just him looking at like a ticket to Florida. He wasn't invited. It's just, is this the goal? Is this the next official move of his? So I actually really like that Rounders ending where he transitions, like that decision to go to a destination, like the actual like physical journey to a location that could result with everything. I really like that. So it could be something where he decides that he's gonna embrace it on a different scale. So yeah, I think that
for WWE or something like that.
Yeah. Basically, he just moves. He's gonna go to another show closer to the main event business, the WWE, basically. Yeah. So I think that's it. I think you reached the end of the story where this guy learned. I love how we figured out the arc at the very end, which is very delicious. It has to be that, though. It has to be that he learned his to feel it in the ring rather than scripted. It's very it embraces the sensibilities of wrestling, but it's also done in a narrative structure that the audience can really embrace. So yeah, I think that's a wrap on the wrestling film. The question now is
a really good story, I think.
What do we call it?
I don't know.
I have an idea.
I didn't actually think of a name.
How about kayfabe?
Yeah, do it. Kayfabe. Okay. Kayfabe. I like it. Yeah.
All right. So, what do you think, Owen Richards, the RCW champion and Irish tag team champion? What do you think of that story?
I think it's really good. I think if it hits a lot of beats, I think if I was watching it as a wrestler or a wrestling fan, there's a lot of things that I would see and appreciate within that story, like the arc. That's really important about the learning the stuff on the fly. You're getting a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, but I also feel like the story is strong enough that you could just get my mother to watch it or a random person and they would still be engaged with what's going on because the beats are all there. Take away the subject matter, I think the core story and the beats can fit to anything. It could be an aspiring soccer player or a tennis player. It could be anything. It's like I think the story is strong enough that it works regardless. But I think the little kind of wrestling nuances that we've included here or there make it something that I think us as wrestlers and wrestling fans would really appreciate. So I think it's a great story.
Yeah, it's really fun too because we get into it from the very beginning with like Boogie Nights, which is the porn industry, Whiplash, which is music. And we actually feel like, as you say, the sensibilities of cinema, but with the qualifiers and the exclusivity of moments that can only be born out of professional wrestling. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Great job, Owen Richards. Before we wrap up, where can people find you, and do you have any upcoming matchups or championship challenges coming up soon?
Yes, well, I do. So, you know, it depends when this obviously goes out, but you can find myself on as Owen Richards on Twitter or on Instagram, and Saviors of Destiny on YouTube. We have Five Factory Pro Wrestling run shows every 2 or 3 months. That's based in Dublin City, 5 minutes from Conley Station, and they're really cheap, really fun nights out, usually on a Friday night. RCW shows are every couple of months on a Saturday in the Pavilion in Cork. And if you're in that area, they're really well-run shows where, as I mentioned earlier, they get big independent wrestlers in. They're well-run, well-produced shows. Even the Five Factory shows, like, they always have little surprises. Like, they had Mark Andrews on it a couple of months ago, and he's a big name, was in WWE and wasn't even announced. So, like, these shows are a lot of fun. Obviously, there's the big OTT shows coming up as well. We have JD McDonough and Jordan Devlin coming over for an OTT show in October, which is already sold out. So independent wrestling is booming. But yeah, Owen Richards on Twitter, Owen Richards on Instagram.
Excellent. Thank you. And for everybody watching, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube on Writing Chops. And yeah, that's it. So, Owen, thank you so much for taking part in Breaking Story with me. And for everyone else, I'll catch you next time for another episode of Storybreakers. Take care.